Okay, hi guys, Faraz from Twitchmates here. We'll be starting a multi-part tutorial series on OBS settings today. We're going to get all the important things out of the way first, so today's tutorial will be on encoding. Okay, let's get started. Alright, the encoding section. This is a very important section, so we will be going through most options very in depth. So we start with video encoding. The first thing you'll see is encoders. Twitch requires you to go with the X264 encoder, so that's what we're going to go with today. However, if you want to know the difference between the encoders, the X264, the QuickSync, and the NVIDIA, the QuickSync and the NVIDIA both perform much better over bit rates of 20,000. However, the X264 performs much better at the bit rates we're using, so between 1500 and 3500. Definitely go with X264. So next is use CBR. You want this checked as this is a Twitch requirement as well. What CBR stands for is constant bitrate. When using constant bitrate, you will use more bandwidth overall. However, your bandwidth will be less spiky. So games where there's a bunch of motion and then not a lot of motion, in the not a lot of motion parts, you will use the same amount of bandwidth, so it'll result in more bandwidth overall. However, you want it checked. You want the less spiky bandwidth. If for any reason you decide to uncheck it, you'll be given something called quality balance. Quality balance is used in conjunction with max bitrate. It's a more of a controlled hands-on approach. The rule of thumb with quality balance is the more motion you have in your stream or in a game, the lower it wants to be. So a very fast motion game, you want a very low quality balance. I'm going to recheck this. Next is enable CBR padding. So I recommend you turn this on and keep it on. What this allows you to do is to change your bitrate midstream. So let's say you're streaming at 3000 kilobits per second and you're dropping frames. Well, then you go into your settings and you change the max bitrate to 2000, see if that fixes the problem. Easy solution. However, you can't do any of that unless this option, enable CBR padding, is checked. So I recommend keeping this checked. Use custom buffer size. What this allows you to do is set a buffer range. However, this can be a little bit detrimental because let's say if you set a buffer range of 5,000. Sometimes OBS will decide to use 4,900 of the buffer, and sometimes OBS will decide to use 500 of the buffer, leading to very spiky interactions. So I recommend keeping this unchecked. If you do check it, you can specify the buffer size right here. Pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. The last thing in video code encoding is your max bitrate. So this is probably the most important part of the section. You want to have a bitrate below 3,500. That is the Twitch requirement for unpartnered streamers. It has to be below 3,500. And just personal testings, I don't recommend a bitrate lower than 1,500. So somewhere in between there. However, what you have to keep in mind here is that viewers need a certain internet speed in order to view your stream. So let's say you're streaming at 3000 kilobits per second and a viewer with a mobile connection or a really bad Wi-Fi connection wants to tune in, he won't be able to. That's too much speed for him. So it's a fine balance between a quality stream, making it look good while allowing everybody to watch. General requirements, for example, if you're streaming at 1080p, you want to stream, or you want a bitrate of 3000 to 3500. If you're streaming at 720p, you want a bitrate between 1800 and 2500. And then there's a recommended bitrate for 480p, 900 to 1200. However, I don't recommend going below 1500. So keep that in mind. Next is audio encoding. This is very heavily specified in the Twitch guidelines for streamers. You can use either MP3 or AAC, and you can use either stereo or mono. The only thing you need to worry about here is if you are using AAC, your max audio bitrate will be 160. If you are using MP3, your max audio bitrate here will be 128. For format, AAC, you're allowed to use both. MP3, you're only allowed to use 44.1 kilohertz. So adjust accordingly. Okay, that is the encoding section of our OBS settings tutorials. I hope you enjoyed it, and make sure to check out our other tutorials, especially on OBS settings, because there's a bunch left at twitchmates.tv. Okay, thank you for watching, and good night.